The Variety Artist, Episode 8. This one is all about national tours, Broadway, and making a living as a musician. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your phone or mobile device. It really helps me a lot. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. They're offering you, the Variety Artist, a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at thevarietyartist.com/book. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Just go to thevarietyartist.com/book right after this podcast and get your free audiobook. Now let's start the show.
Welcome to The Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
Today's guest is an old friend of mine. He's an amazing musician that's played percussion and conducted for tons of national tours, Broadway and Off Broadway shows. He's also one of the founding members of Beyond the Gig, a seminar that teaches musicians the business side of music, how to make a living as a musician. Variety Artists, I give you Danny Taylor.
Hello.
Hello, Danny Taylor. What's going on?
Not too much. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
It's been a long, long time. I think probably 10 years or so.
Yeah, at least.
I have my coffee in front of me. I have a water, and I am ready to go.
Excellent.
We have to start. We're going to talk about Seymour Hams. We're going to talk about your Broadway adventures and
All right.
Beyond the Gig and all that kind of stuff. But let's start off where we started off. I, of course, am friends with your parents.
Uh-huh.
And you were my assistant for my magic shows, right?
I was, absolutely. It was a great job. I was thinking, I've never actually had a quote real job.
Oh,
But that was amazing. I was thinking a senior in high school when I started with you.
I think so. In fact, I was talking to my daughter yesterday, and I was trying to figure out exactly when it was. And the only reason that I remember is that one summer that we worked together, I was in that space suit.
Uh-huh. Yep.
I thought it was a great idea because I booked a ton of library shows.
Oh yeah.
But I was in a space suit in 90-degree Los Angeles temperature
Right.
for the entire summer.
But it was perfect. It fit the theme of all the shows you were doing, and it booked you a lot of shows.
It did. It was 2001, A Space Odyssey, I think was the theme, something like that.
Oh, right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so that would have been early college for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
So senior in high school, early college. Now, this was before iPods or the iPhone, so tell everybody exactly what you did.
Oh man, so we would use a mini disc player to run all of your cues. So I would, cue them up, and you had them all set. We had to swap out mini discs for what show we were doing, and I'd handle the animals after the illusion. Set all the speakers and set up the tables and all that good stuff, and make sure you were happy. And
I was very happy.
well, then I did my job.
That was a fun time.
Oh, I loved it. And I don't know if I've ever actually talked to you about this, but I learned so much from you that I really attribute a lot of what I've done with my career from your not only your stage presence and how you do a show, but your networking ability, the reaching out to people and the following up with thank you notes and all that kind of stuff. I think that's something that is really lacking in a lot of performers that says a lot about you and can really help with your career. So thank you for imparting that knowledge on me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for doing that is one thing I find that a lot of entertainers don't do is follow up afterwards. It's the opportunity, right?
Oh, yeah, it's huge. When I was playing community theater shows back in LA, every closing night, I would make sure there was a thank you note on the conductor's stand and a thank you note for the contractor, the person that hires the musicians, just to say thanks for the job, and hopefully we can work together again soon.
Oh, nice. And I bet you're probably the only person in the show that was doing that.
I didn't see any other thank you notes, so I might have been.
So they remember you.
Right. They remember you. They remember that you're a nice person, and hopefully you played well, and they enjoyed your artistry, and hopefully it just leads to more and more work. Which so far for me it has.
Yeah, so far, I looked at your resume when I was preparing for this podcast, and it's crazy. You've been everywhere and done everything, right? Now, where have you traveled around to?
I think I've been to every state in the country now and a little bit of Canada. Right after college, I did a couple of what they call bus and truck tours, which are, non-union, different city every night, and every city you've never wanted to go to in America. But it was an amazing experience. I worked crew on those as well. My first show, I was what they call the pit rat, so I was in charge of setting up the orchestra pit.
Yep.
And then on my second show, in addition to playing drums, I was also like a utility crew guy. And by the end of that run, I was doing all the rigging for our proscenium. I would help connect all the lighting. I would help run cables for sound. I would do the sets.
Was that for one particular show, or was that a number of shows?
That was one show. That was a tour of Gypsy, which I did. And that was about a year long.
So you get back from Gypsy, and you basically paid your dues for a year now.
Yeah.
Then what happens?
So I was still living in LA, and my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, who I'd met on my first show, was still living in New York. And I had made the decision that I was actually offered a job to do the next touring season with that company, staying at the non-union one-nighter world. I thought that it would be smarter to try my hand in New York. So I decided to move to New York. Actually, before I made the move, a musical director that I had worked with in Los Angeles got an off-Broadway show and asked me to come along with him. So before I'd even moved to New York, I actually had a gig to go to New York with, which was kind of unheard of and something I am beyond grateful for.
So that's nice. So you moved out there with a job?
Yeah, which is sort of unheard of.
I know most people do. They move to New York or move to LA thinking, "Oh, I'm going to move to New York and become a star. I'm going to move to LA and become a star."
Right.
And then they beat the streets for 6 months and then get tired and they go home back to Iowa.
Yeah. I was planning on going and working at, Guitar Center or something like that and, paying my dues. But the show came along and ended up running for about a year and was just an amazing way to start my New York life.
And what show was that?
It's called The Marvelous Wonderettes. It was a 50s and 60s jukebox musical.
Okay, so kind of like the Pastels.
Almost identical to the Pastels.
Except for a larger scale, probably.
It's very similar to a lot of those Seymour shows.
For those of you that don't know, a couple things we just brought up. The Pastels is something my wife and I put together called the Pastels 60s Rock and Roll Extravaganza, and it was a journey of girls' 60s songs from 1960 to 1969, and I did a little bit of hosting, and if you look carefully on my website, there's a picture there somewhere. And so that was the Pastels. Now Seymour Hams, we'll get back to your Broadway adventure.
Yeah.
But Seymour Hams is a restaurant. Your dad managed it or
he was a co-owner.
Okay. Danny's dad, Al Taylor, who's a wonderful actor and teaches acting in the LA area, bought it with a number of other actor friends. And so it was a restaurant where the waitresses sang. There were shows going on all the time, and it was an amazing place. And I made a lot of friends there, including you yourself.
Yeah. I was much younger then.
A little bit. Okay, I have to tell this story because everybody I know tells this story about little Danny Taylor when he was. No. Yeah. When he was, I don't know how old you were. You're a little kid, sleeping the bass drum of your dad's drum set.
Wait, what's that? Say that again.
That when you were 10 years old or maybe even younger, that you were sleeping in your dad's bass drum of his drum kit.
Wait, what are you saying? No, I'm kidding. Yes, I did indeed sleep in the bass drum. He had an open front head, and there was a pillow in there for muffling, and it just looked really comfortable.
And so did he wake you up by playing?
I think I was actually able to sleep through him playing at times. So
you were sleeping during a show?
Yeah, I think so, from what I remember and what I'm told. I'm still a very solid sleeper. I can sleep through just about anything now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Until you have kids.
Right.
I used to sleep through everything all the time until I had kids. And then all of a sudden, I'd wake up in the middle of the night just with the smallest little sound.
Yeah.
So you tour with the second show. What happens after that? I mean, you moved to New York.
Right. So I moved to New York, got that off-Broadway show. And from there, that sort of afforded me the luxury of being able to get around to the Broadway shows. So what I would do is I joined the union as soon as I got to New York. With that union membership, you also get access to all the contact information for every musician in New York that's part of the union.
Oh.
So with that contact sheet, I then started looking up every Broadway show, and I looked up every drummer and percussionist for those shows, and I contacted every single one of them. And I would ask if they needed a sub. Broadway world, it's very common where a player will take a night off and they need somebody to cover the show. So a lot of people get their start by subbing on shows.
Ah.
So I emailed everybody and said, I'm new to town. I'd love to come sub for you. And if not, I'd love to at least come hang out in the pit and observe. Almost everybody welcomed me in to at least watch, which was really incredible.
That's an amazing strategy.
Yeah. It was, for one, I learned something every time I sit in a pit. I still, when I'm in New York, I will still try to go sit in orchestra pits just because you're always going to learn something when you're in there. And plus, it gets your face out there. It lets the other musicians see you and meet you. And there's a lot you can do, especially now through Facebook and Twitter and all the digital marketing you can do. But there's really nothing that will ever beat face-to-face time. So I try to get out there and meet people. And sure enough, one of the players I met was a guy named Doug Hendricks, who was one of the percussionists for In the Heights. Mm-hmm. We got to be friends, and he needed a sub and took a chance on me. I played my first show at In the Heights and was accepted as a sub, and that was my first Broadway show.
How was that?
It was incredible and nerve-wracking. By the time the show was over, I was completely comatose. There's nothing like subbing because the concentration level is so high, and the scariest thing is you don't get a rehearsal. The first time you're ever playing, you're playing a show.
So are you just reading the music, or how are you doing that?
You get the music ahead of time, and you also get audio recordings, and if you're lucky, you'll get a video of the conductor. And so you can go sit in the pit and watch, or what they call audit, as many times as you want to feel comfortable. When I'm going to sub, I usually watch 5 or 6 times. And then you go home and you recreate the setup in your studio or practice space or wherever you're going to do it, and you just play along with recordings and really study what the regular player does. Especially for drummers and percussionists, we play a lot of things that aren't always written. Mm-hmm. So you have to listen to recordings and transcribe what the regular player is doing, and then learn how to play that way. For one thing, the Doug used to play on kind of a altered, almost left-handed setup, so I had to learn how to play on like a left-handed system, which was difficult. But again, I gained a new skill to be able to do that. So you just practice as much as you can, and then you come in and do the show, and hopefully the conductor approves you. You go in every, however often the regular player calls you. With Doug, I was in probably about once a week, which was nice.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
So I imagine the other musicians are probably just as nervous as you because they have a new guy coming in. They don't know if he's going to be good or not, right?
Kinda, yeah. They there's always that sort of level of what's going to happen. Did the new guy prepare enough, and how's he going to sound? Subbing happens so often. A lot of them are I guess a little numb to it. Like they're just used to a new guy coming in, and it's either going to work or it's not.
Yeah, and they just play through, right?
Right.
Man, now you're the number one guy for a number of shows, right?
I'm getting there, yeah. I've done a lot of tours. I still sub in New York when I'm home. After Heights, I actually auditioned for the tour in the Heights, which I ended up not getting. But what happened was that audition alone put me on the radar of the contractor, who ended up contracting another tour for Legally Blonde. And so Legally Blonde tour needed a replacement. So I ended up doing the last year, the first national of Legally Blonde, playing drum set.
Nice.
Tell
me about Sister Act. Was that it seems from what I've read, following you on Facebook and talking to your dad and stuff, Sister Act was a big deal, right?
It was, yeah. So I subbed on Broadway playing percussion, and then that led to getting the first tour of Sister Act, which also my wife, Kelly, she had auditioned for the tour, and it ended up getting a role. So when she got the role, I said, hey, I want to go on tour, and they were able to work with us. So we actually got to tour together for almost 2 years, which was amazing. So again, doesn't happen very often. We were very fortunate to have that.
Does she do a lot of Broadway?
She does. That's kind of her main thing, Broadway stuff. And then, now that we're on the road, she's traveling with me. So we're getting her going on some voiceover work because that can all be done remotely now. Yeah, she's quite the voice actress.
It's different than 20 years ago.
Oh yeah.
You'd have to go into a studio to do voice work, right?
Yeah. We can do all this stuff in our apartment or, wherever we happen to be living this month.
Just like right now. Where are you right now?
Exactly. Right now I'm in Cleveland.
Oh, you're in Cleveland right now.
Yeah, Cleveland, Ohio.
You're in Cleveland. I'm in Southern California. It's a different world than it used to be.
Oh yeah, and recording music as well. I'm getting myself set up to be able to record on the road. So say a band needs a recording of percussion, they can send me their song. I'll put the percussion on it and send it back, and that's that. I actually just did that for my buddy's soul band. It's a band called Soul Scratch, and they're really great. I'd highly recommend checking them out. But I just recorded some conga tracks for their upcoming release.
What type of music do they do? Do you say
it's soul music?
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwback 70s vibe, but the lyrics are all very poignant to what's happening today in our world. And
after you assisted me in my magic show, I had a couple of other assistants, but then I invested a big $35 into something called an iJet, and an iJet hooked into, back then, an iPod, and I could do all my music remotely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was perfect. So I am like a lot of magicians now, a one-man show. I can set everything up and do everything remotely, music and everything.
Wow, that's incredible.
So what are you traveling in? Do you have a van or a RV?
Yeah, so my wife and I we ended up driving the tour. So we've got a minivan. The company would provide flights if we needed to, but we opted to drive the tour just so we always have a car in the cities and gives us a little more freedom. We do a lot of Airbnbs and VRBOs. Kelly ends up booking a lot of those for us. And, we always find places close to the theater and we just make a new little home every month.
Actress, booking agent.
Yeah, right.
The whole package.
Absolutely.
So you're touring now? Any more Broadway shows?
Not right now. So for now, I'm probably going to stay out on, I'm currently playing drums and the assistant conductor for Alladin.
Oh,
the North American tour. So we've been out for just about a year now. This is one of those shows that's probably going to go forever. I mean, we've got solid dates into 2020, and then there's a whole list of question mark cities, and there will probably be return engagements as we go along. So this is one of those things where it's basically about job security. I think in every artist's career, you kind of have slumps and you have ups and downs. Most of last year I was able to, we were paying our bills, but we weren't really saving much. And, this job sort of affords us to put some money in the bank and hopefully be able to, buy a house someday or do invest in something or something like that. Probably stick this out for a while. It's also giving me the chance to conduct much more often than I would in New York. So being able to conduct a brand new band every month has been a huge learning experience for me because we only travel a few players and then we get local musicians in every city we go to.
So how did you get that first conducting gig? How did you go from percussion to conducting?
So that was on Sister Act. I was playing percussion and then, we had been out for about a year and I was getting a little bored and thought, hey, I'm going to teach myself how to conduct the show. So I talked to our regular conductor. He, gave me the pointers and told me all the things to look for. And it was also playing a keyboard as well. It was our Key 3 book. So it was a lot of supplemental sounds like some strings and baritone sax and, kind of extra things. So you're playing keyboard with your left hand and conducting with your right. So that was actually the biggest challenge for me was working on my keyboard chops to be able to do that.
So you're playing keyboard and conducting?
Yeah. So what ended up happening was we were in Madison, Wisconsin, and our regular conductor had to go away for a week to work on another show. Our associate conductor was scheduled to conduct for that week, and I was the emergency backup. There's no way I should ever have gone up. It was like just worst case scenario, Danny will conduct. Mm-hmm. So sure enough, our Key 1 player ends up falling on the ice and breaking his arm.
Oh.
So the associate conductor has to come down and play the Key 1 book, and they put me up to conduct, and we flew in a percussionist from another local city to play percussion, and I conducted the show.
How was that? How was that first one?
Again, it's terrifying. Yeah, luckily that was a show where we traveled the entire band, so the band knew it really well and was really able to help me along. The cast all knew what kind of position I was in, so everyone was very helpful and did everything they could to put me at ease. But it was great. It all went well. Because of that, later on in the tour, when our associate decided to leave, they bumped me up to being the official associate conductor. So I would conduct 2 shows a week, or sorry, 2 or 3 shows a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just great training. And that regular conductor is a gentleman named B.A. Huffman, who's been huge for me. I met him on Sister Act, and he sort of took me under his wing conducting wise. He's also the one that brought me on to do Hunchback with Disney, which was an incredible experience. I helped develop the drum and percussion book for that.
I saw that. It was terrific.
Right. So we did 2 official Disney productions and a cast album, a studio album, which I'm on. And now it's being licensed to be done regionally all over the country.
Oh.
It tends to be a huge hit, anywhere people are doing it. And then BA is also the conductor on Alladin. So that's another reason why I'm able to conduct out here, is that he knew I had done it before and said, okay, we'll make it work to get you up out here.
So he does a lot of the Disney shows?
He does. So
Alladin and Hunchback and...
Yeah, he's kind of part of the Alan Menken team. So Alan Menken,
sure,
wrote every Disney movie there is.
Yeah, basically.
And then underneath Alan is a gentleman named Michael Kozarin, who is our music supervisor. And Kaz is really responsible for kind of making Alan's music come to life. And under Kaz, Kaz has a few conductors that he trusts and puts on the shows. And BA is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So BA's, I think, got to start with Little Shop of Horrors and then moved on to Beauty and the Beast. I think he did some work on Little Mermaid and basically all the Menken shows.
So anytime there's going to be a new Disney show, hopefully he'll be involved, which means hopefully you'll be involved.
Hopefully, yes.
That's the plan, huh?
Exactly.
Tell me about the theaters. As you're going across the country, I've seen theaters in LA, theaters in New York, big, beautiful theaters. Do you find a difference between the theaters in the different states?
Yeah, almost every theater in the country is much bigger than anywhere else in LA or New York. That was one of the things that blew me away going to New York, is the Broadway houses are really very small.
Oh.
The backstages are small, the houses are small. And when you come from touring, these are huge houses. I think the theater we're in now is 3,100 seats.
Oh.
It's just these massive places. In Los Angeles, we played the Pantages for 3 months, and that's a huge theater.
Yeah.
But compared to New York and Broadway, the Broadway houses are really tiny.
Huh. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was always surprised about that. And the backstages always change. For touring, the person that's sort of kind of in charge of making our show fit in each theater is it's a position called the head carpenter. And so they get a diagram of the stage before we get there, and they have to decide how we're going to fit in. And sometimes we've got plenty of space, and sometimes we have no space. So they'll hang set pieces in the air when we're not using them, and they find all kinds of creative ways to make sure we can get the show in somehow.
Huh, what a job. Now tell me about this, the Beyond the Gig thing.
When I started touring, I started doing lectures at colleges, basically talking about the music side of the business side of music. Mm-hmm. What sort of started that is when you go to music school, and I'd imagine any school in the arts, all the focus is on honing your skills and becoming the best artist that you possibly can. But not many teachers really talk about what to do with those skills and how to actually make a living once you've become the best artist you can be.
Right. It's the same with acting. You take a number of acting classes, whether it's in college, junior college, or even private places in LA. They focus all on the craft itself.
Right. Exactly. So I ended up kind of developing these lectures, and then I was talking to a buddy of mine named Danny Young and Josh Samuels, and we all discovered that they were doing the exact same kind of lectures. So we decided to team up and kind of help market for ourselves, and we created Beyond the Gig. And so
they were doing the same thing in colleges?
Yeah. They had already done almost an identical lecture. We sort of put our outlines together that we were using, and they were almost identical. So we put together kind of a uniform outline that we do the lectures on, and then we use our own personal stories to show how things have worked for our career or not worked, or things to watch out for and that kind of stuff.
You're touring across the country. Before you go into a state, if you know you're going into a particular state, do you contact the colleges in that state since you're there
I do.
anyway?
Yeah. So but exactly that. I'll email any of the colleges or music schools I can find, see if we can book something in the time that we're in the city. I actually haven't done them on this tour yet because the conducting schedule has been a little crazy and rehearsal schedule has been a bit much. It's hard to find time to actually get in to do the lectures because we're also, when we're not doing shows at night, there's also a lot of rehearsals in the daytime. I haven't done many of them recently, but I'm planning on starting them up again very shortly.
Well, other than thank you notes, because we talked about that at the very beginning, give us a little taste of one or two other pieces of advice from beyond the gig.
The biggest thing that I stress and say probably a dozen times throughout the lecture is be on time. You know, it's the old adage: early is on time is late, and late is fired. So sometimes I think it sometimes says late is unacceptable, but for me, I change it to late is fired because it very well can be.
Yeah.
It's different being in the arts for being on time because, it's one thing to, maybe work a 9 to 5 desk job. And if you're late, maybe you don't get as much work done that day. Whereas if you're late to a performance, you've got 3,100 people waiting to see a show that can't start until you're there.
Oh, yeah.
And beyond that, it's kind of, it's disrespectful to the fellow players that you're with, to your other artists. If you're in a studio, it's costing a lot of money if you're late. Kind of planning to be on time. It's not just showing up on time. It's, making, for a drummer or percussionist, we've got so much gear we have to set up. It means you've taken into account traffic and that you're going to have to set up and how long is the load in from the parking lot to the orchestra pit. Making sure that you've done everything you need to do so that when it's time to play, you're sitting there 5 minutes before, calm and relaxed. Because the other thing about being late is there's no way you can really perform at your best if you're stressed out about showing up late.
Sure. In my business too, I do mainly school assemblies now. If I'm sitting on the freeway and the show's at 8:30 and I'm sitting on the freeway at 8:10, I'm panicking, freaked out. I may get there on time and get set up, but if I'm running late, you're right. Your heart's pounding. You're not putting together the best performance you can have.
Yeah. I learned this early. I think I was actually maybe late a couple times with you, and and it's awful. It's it's a terrible feeling.
And in my particular situation, I have 300 kids waiting for me, and the PTA mom is panicked.
Yep.
And everybody's getting freaked out. They're saying, "Where's the entertainer?" In your case, you have thousands of people waiting for you.
Right.
That's a good way to get fired.
Exactly. Yes. So being on time is a big one. The other one that I talk about a lot is putting yourself in an environment for success. Basically meaning, for me, I knew from a very young age I wanted to play on Broadway. So that meant moving to New York. Besides just getting myself to the city where the craft was I wanted to do, going to visit the orchestra pits, putting my face out there. There's a lot of social hangs after shows. So, I'd make sure I would go to those and meet people. There's also, there's a Broadway softball league that I used to play in. Where, I enjoyed playing softball, but it was also a chance to just be in that community and be surrounded by people doing what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think any artist can do that. Magicians can, you've got the Comedy Magic Club, you've got the Magic Castle.
Yeah, we also have tons of magic conventions and and different things like that too.
Yeah, and again, I think this is kind of something I learned from you, where you would go do the conventions for the market that you wanted to hit.
Right.
I remember doing the library showcases. Yeah, that's huge. You can't expect people to come just find you. You have to go find the work.
It's true. I love those library showcases. The one with the spacesuit, I think I booked 100 shows.
Yeah.
It was good for you and me.
Absolutely. Yeah, so those are kind of the big ones that I stress.
Mm-hmm.
And again, everything that I talk about and beyond the gig, and anytime I really give advice to any up and coming players, it's always assuming that you've put it in the time and the practice to become the best artist that you can.
We have to assume that you're at a point where you can make your living doing it. You're
right.
Make a living doing it.
Yeah, there really aren't any shortcuts. These are sort of just bonuses on top of being a great artist that can help further your career.
And your two partners, do you guys do it together, or do you do it individually at different colleges, or how does that work?
Usually individually, because we're all spread out. Actually, right now, Josh is out with us playing percussion on Alladin, so I think we're going to try to book a couple doing them together, which we've never done before, so that should be fun. Danny Young is now based in Nashville, and so I think he's still doing some down there, but he keeps pretty busy in the studio scene down there, and I know he's just been traveling a ton with different bands and playing festivals.
Now, when you tour, do you keep your house or apartment in New York?
We kept it for about 6 or 7 months, and then made the decision that we're going to be out on the road for probably a while. So we gave up our place in New York and put our stuff in storage. If we ever have breaks or need to go home for anything, I've got my parents in LA, and then Kelly's family is in New York out on Long Island.
Oh.
So if there's ever things we need to do in either of those cities, we have a place to stay, which is great. I did end up keeping my studio space in New York because they're incredibly hard to come by. I'm in a place called the Music Building, which is on 8th Avenue between 38th and 39th. It's a building completely devoted to musicians. It's about, I think, 12 floors with 5 or 6 studios on every floor.
Nice.
It's a very colorful building. There's graffiti on the walls everywhere, and it's everything you would kind of think a New York rock and roll building would be. It's pretty neat. It's 10, 11 o'clock at night. It's a very loud building. It sort of caters to rock bands and stuff, but like the room that I'm in is actually 8 Broadway drummers. The walls are lined with equipment, and then we've got a communal drum set and a bass amp and a guitar amp if we need to have rehearsals in there. But that's where we all go to practice, so we can make as much noise as we want to and not disrupt anybody. Because it's so close to Midtown and the theater district, you can go take a nap between shows if you wanted to. It's kind of prime real estate, so I'm still paying for that, and I keep all my gear that I'm not using on Alladin. I still keep that there at the studio.
I told the story on one of my other podcasts with Lou Serrano, a corporate magician. I forget which episode it is. The story of when we did Tommy Lee's party.
Oh, yeah.
And I told the story about using the restroom.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I'll tell the story again.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great story.
So basically, I go to use the restroom, and I walk through Tommy Lee, his studio that has a couple of drum sets and gargoyles on the walls. And so I go in to use the restroom, and it's fur lined with pink fur. And then I come out, and Danny, you, of course, are my assistant at the time. And I said, Danny, you have to use the bathroom, right? And so Danny says, no, I really don't have to use the restroom. I'm like, yeah, no, you really have to use the bathroom. And so what did you say? I don't know. It's something like, no, I really don't have to go.
Right, yeah.
And you're a drummer. I'm thinking it'll be a great experience.
Right.
That was pretty cool. Daryl Hannah was there, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, she got the snake.
Yeah, I still use the pictures that you took of me in the straitjacket.
Yeah, absolutely.
With Daryl Hannah grabbing the strap, crotch strap.
Right. Oh, that was wild.
That was wild. Now, here's the ending of that story that I didn't tell. That was the party where that kid drowned in the pool. Right. And the only reason that I knew that is that I got a call the next day from my dad, and he says, "Oh, did you hear what happened at Tommy Lee's party?" And I said, "Well, I was there. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
We did a magic show. We had a fun time, and we left." And he told me about the kid drowning in the pool, and so it must have happened right after we left.
Yeah. It was. I think it was actually pretty far after we left.
About a month later, I got People magazine, and they did a whole story on that.
Oh yeah, didn't they use one of the pictures?
I don't know if they used a picture. All I know is that when I read through it, I was so excited because not because it was a horrible tragedy, but
yeah.
But I wasn't excited about that. But in it, it told all about the story, and it told about Tommy Lee and who was there, and then it said, "And a magician did tricks."
That's right.
I'm like, yay! I'm famous.
Right. I remember that.
So that's my Tommy Lee story.
Yeah.
In Malibu, it was beautiful. So do you have any horror stories, things that just nasty things?
Oh, man. There's been a few surprises when, some like technology won't work. So, in the orchestra pit, we use a system called Avioms, which are like personal monitors. So we can dial in whatever we want to hear, and we all use headphones.
Okay.
I've had those go out on me, which means I can't hear anything, which is a little terrifying. I also, every once in a while, if an orchestra pit is too small, we'll put the drums and or percussion in another room, and it's called playing remotely. That means I'm completely separated from the orchestra pit, and I'm watching the conductor on a television screen, and I've had the television screen go out. That's a little terrifying.
I think when I saw you in Alladin, you were doing that, right? You had a room all to yourself.
We had our percussionist in another room, yeah. I was still in the orchestra pit playing drums, but our percussionist was in another room.
So when the TV goes out and you can't see or hear what everybody else is saying, what's going on?
You kind of go by muscle memory and hope you're right, and then start waving your arms rapidly, hoping one of your audio techs can find their way to you and fix it. Usually in a remote situation, they'll give you a phone or a microphone or something where you can dial out if you have to. So, once you're done playing, you can dial out and say, something's gone wrong.
Give me one more. I love these.
Forgot about this one. It's actually my first job. I know I said my first job was touring, but there was a job before that tour where I had booked a job on a cruise ship. To get that job, I was playing a production of Guys and Dolls down in Long Beach, and a sax player there was a music director on cruise ships and thought I sounded great and said, "Hey, you should go do cruise ships." And I said, "That sounds like a lot of fun. I'll go do it." So I get out there on the cruise ship. It was a Royal Caribbean ship. It was actually docked out of San Pedro, so it was perfect. I could still come home on the weekends. And my job out there was to play in the show band, which meant backing up all the entertainers that would come on board, playing some of their production shows. And it involved a lot of sight reading, which I was really good at.
So you have a lot of different pieces that you're playing.
Yeah. I mean, every night was something different. So in addition to this, which I wasn't aware of, is that a couple nights a week we would have to play in the lounge as like a jazz combo. So my jazz chops were not that great coming out of college. My degree is in classical percussion, so it was mallets and timpani and all that, and I really hadn't worked on my jazz playing all that much. And the musical director out there was a huge jazz head. So I got through all the production stuff fine. We had a guest come on, I nailed that. All the big band show stuff was great. But when we got to the combo playing, this guy just did not like my playing. He didn't think I could swing, and thought I was a terrible jazz player. And actually, to top this all off, always forget about this. This is kind of personal. The Paul Boland, our mutual friend, was actually scheduled to come on this ship. My parents were booking trips to come on the ship when Paul was going to be there, and I was going to play with Paul, and it was just going to be great and everything.
For anybody that doesn't know, Paul Boland is a terrific actor and impressionist. He sings, he does all sorts of crazy stuff. He's a very successful cruise ship entertainer.
So he was scheduled to come on, and I was going to play with him. It was going to be great and wonderful. And 2 weeks into the run, the musical director fired me.
Oh.
And he actually, this is a really good sort of young learning experience. He didn't fire me. He actually told me I had to quit. And the way he told me, the way he convinced me to do that was that he said, go back and practice and you get better. And if you quit, that means I can hire you again. But if I fire you, then, you're never going to work for this company again. So I was like, okay, no, I really want to come back. It's a young kid, and I'm, crying in his office. And it was really, I had to go up to the captain's deck and call my dad to say, come pick me up at the port, because they're not going to let me come back on the ship. It was
humiliating.
It was humiliating, devastating, absolutely awful. This was the first real professional job I had outside of college, and I got fired, and it was tough. Somebody said I'm not good enough to do what I love to do. So I kind of had to pick myself up, and I got in the practice shed, as they say, and really worked on my jazz playing, and now I feel very confident playing jazz.
Wow.
Aladdin's a big band show, and I also have no problem sitting in on jazz combos, and I feel really good about that skill. Sure enough, a couple weeks after that happened, I got the call for that first tour. Everything piggybacked after that. Meeting my wife and all these other tours came after. So it sort of reminds me, it was one of my favorite quotes of the Christian Bale Batman movies is, why do we fall down so we can pick ourselves up?
Yep.
I'm sure everyone is going to face some point in their lives where, they get knocked down, and it's kind of how you handle that will decide how the rest of your life could go. You can either take the defeat, or you can pick yourself up and improve yourself and try to do the best you can with what you were given.
Right, and sometimes it seems like the worst things that happen to us are some of the best things that happen to us. Because if that wouldn't have happened to you, you probably wouldn't have gone back to your studio and practiced all of your jazz chops, right?
Exactly. Yep. No, it really forced me to do something that I wasn't comfortable with, and now I'm great with it. Actually, it turns out that a few months later, the musical director that fired me got fired himself. There was another sax player ended up taking over for him, and that new musical director actually called me to come back to the ship because he liked my play and wanted me to play. And by that time, I had already booked the new tour. So it was.
I'm sorry, I can't do your cruise ship because I'm touring.
Right. Yeah. It was a little bit of vindication.
Do you have any? You have a little piece of advice for the working pro out there, the guy that's been doing it for a while?
Yeah, I think the best thing that we can do is not to rest on your successes. It's real easy to get comfortable with where you are, and if things are going well, be great with that. But as soon as you let up off the gas, somebody else is going to come in and take those gigs from you. So whatever it means to you, whether it's continuing to hone your skills or finding new markets to perform in, or whatever new avenues you can to keep yourself growing as a person and as an artist, and to keep that career going. I think it's really important for us to never relax, really.
Yeah, it's funny. I've asked that question on a number of different podcasts with a number of different artists, musicians, magicians, balloon artists, and a lot of them give me that similar advice.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be somebody else, younger, stronger, better, whatever it is, that's always going to be pushing just as hard as you, if not harder. So if you don't continue to push yourself forward, you might get lost in the mix.
Sure, makes sense. Now, give us one book and tell us why.
The book that I would recommend, it's called Effortless Mastery, and it's by Kenny Werner. And it's a meditative book. It's really geared towards musicians, but I think any performer could benefit from it. It really sort of takes the pressure off performing. It's so easy for us to get inside our heads and be self-conscious about what we're doing, or hope that everybody likes what we're doing and all that. And this sort of helps you deal with that. If you buy the digital version, it comes with, actually I think any version you buy, it comes with some guided meditations. And I've used these anytime I've had to go into a stressful situation, whether it's subbing on a show for the first time, or, when I go to conduct. I still, to this day, every show I go to conduct, I try to get a meditation in, just to kind of calm myself down and put myself in that place of calm and relaxation when you're going into such a stressful thing. Right.
I used to do that once I no longer had assistants and I was doing it myself. I would do that right before a show. Put me in a good space so I'm ready to do the best I can. Effortless Mastery. Well, I know your time is valuable, so I'll let you go. Thanks, Danny, for doing my podcast.
Oh, my pleasure.
Where can folks get a hold of you?
So I've got my website, reddannytaylor.com, Facebook, Red Danny Taylor, and YouTube, Red Danny Taylor, and Twitter, Red Danny Taylor, and Instagram, Red Danny Taylor.
How about if they want to do something with Beyond the Gig?
So we've got our website, beyondthegig.com, on Twitter, Beyond the Gig. I don't think we've done an Instagram yet. Facebook page, Beyond the Gig. Yeah, it's all about branding.
That's it. Well, thanks again, Danny. You're awesome.
My pleasure.
For those of you out there, listeners of the Variety Artist Podcast, Audible, which is one of my sponsors, is now offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Just go to thevarietyartist.com/book to get your free audiobook. And thanks to all my variety artists, if you found this podcast valuable, tell a friend. That's how we can spread the word. And feel free to reach me at john@thevarietyartist.com or join my Facebook group at The Variety Artist, where you can ask me to ask questions of our guests. Or on Twitter, I am at The Variety Artists, branding once again. But of course, this one doesn't have a T because we didn't have the room for it, so it's called The Variety Artists. Or visit my website at www www.thevarietyartist.com, where you'll find super informative blogs and all the show notes from today's interviews, all the great stuff Danny's talked about. Now go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.
That's all for this episode of The Variety Artist, but your journey continues on our website. Go to thevarietyartist.com for more strategies, insight, and resources, as well as show notes on today's guest to assist you in your career. We'll see you on the next episode of The Variety Artist. But until then, go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.